We are live. Hello. My phone is slightly out of sync. We are live. Let me just alter that. Let me just alter. My phone is just playing up slightly. Apologies. It's better. Okay, welcome to this tier ranking of 80s horror films. Now, last week I did specifically slasher films. Now, this was going to be an 80s/90s horror film tier ranking, but looking back, there was just so many 80s films that are so classic that I just thought, you know what, it's just going to be another 80s horror film tier ranking. This isn't last week was specifically slasher films. I would have done another slasher film tier ranking from the 80s, but there's so many, and there's so many of the films I either haven't seen or it's been so long since I've seen them that I would have had to rewatch them and just give an honest opinion. So what I've done is I've included some, 80 slasher films, but I've also included a lot of, there's vampire films, there's haunted house films, there's a couple of giallos in there, I think, or giallo rip-offs. So yeah, basically, so if I'm going to go over to tier list, which what I did last week. Now I've got to work out how to share the screen again, which I always forget how to do. So share. I can't believe I can't. I always forget how to do this. Share screen. Yeah, share screen. Chrome tab. And yeah, that's the one. Share. So here we are. We have got we have got 40. We've got a lot of films. I think I put in 3, 6, 9, 12. Must be close to 40 films. 40 films. So, yeah. And let me emphasize this. This is, if I put a film in S tier, which is basically, I'll move my phone over there. It's easier. S tier is basically the best tier, then A, B, C, D. Now, S tier, whatever I give S tier for movies tonight is, it's in relation to the films it's up against. It's not, it doesn't mean it's an S tier film. Let's say like something like Evil Dead was A tier tonight. Now, if I was to place Evil Dead with the greatest films I've watched, Halloween, Terminator 2, Aliens, Evil Dead would be like D tier. Because it's just not in the same league. The ratings on these films are entirely related to what films they're competing against. So for that reason, it's, don't be surprised if you think, well, why is that A tier? Why is that B tier? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, let's get this started anyway. So we've got Fatal Games from 1984. Now, I think it's 1984. Now, this is a slasher film that is basically a movie where a bunch of teens are in some sort of like athletic school and they're competing to be in the 1984 Olympics. But they start getting killed off by somebody with a javelin. Yeah, I know. It's a crazy film. It's not a great film, the plot is ridiculous. I mean, they're openly using steroids, which is like, where that come from? But yeah, it's a 1984 slasher film with somebody using a javelin, and it's not a very good film. It's not awful, but it's definitely C tier. So it's going to go there. Now, next film is Hide and Go Shriek, which is a 1988 slasher film, and I only saw this film must be 12 months ago, and I've got like this, morbid love affair with late 80s slasher films, well, 80s slasher films in general, but the late 80s, they are so bad. I mean, the early 80s, there was quality content, but quality control. Late 80s, that just gone out the window, and this is one of those films where it clearly gone out the window, but it's decent. It's not a terrible film. You've got, likable teens. You've got a scenario in a department store where one of the characters' parents owns the store, and you've got like a guy who is basically looking after things, but who's a bit, he's ex-criminal, so you think he's set up as like the sort of like bad guy, the criminal who's doing all the killing, but it's not him, clearly. But it's not great. It's not bad. It's just very, very sort of, it's a better than Fatal Games, yes, but it's definitely C tier. Next up is Hellraiser. Now, Hellraiser is obviously, an iconic film. Pinhead is like the fourth icon of 80s slasher films, and he doesn't really deserve it because he doesn't really do it. He doesn't do anything. He's barely in Hellraiser. He's barely in the film, but because of the the movie posters and the way they pushed the film, they clearly wanted him to be like front and center. But this is not about Pinhead. This is about the side, well, not even the side characters, the main characters, and he just happens to be the iconic shot. Even in later sequels, he's still not like front and center as much as you'd think. And I do like Hellraiser, but I don't think it's as good as what a lot of people think. For me, it's not on the same level as the first Nightmare film, the first Friday film. It's a totally different film anyway, because it's far more it's more adult in the way it's set out. It's more graphic, but it's not to my taste. I actually prefer Hellraiser 3, but I still appreciate it for what it is, and I'm going to put in the B tier because I can't deny what it's done for the the slasher genre. Next is the Evil Dead. Evil Dead, again, it's a film that's regarded as a classic. It doesn't do it for me. Evil Dead 2 is kind of like a remake, reboot. It's a better film. Evil Dead is very raw, very visceral. I appreciate it for what it is, but it's not really my thing. I do think it needed that sort of reboot that it got in '87. It's looking dated now, and again, I think that's gonna have to go in C tier, but ahead of Hide and Go Shriek. Return to Living Dead. This is a film again. This is a film that is loved by so many people, and I don't understand the love this film gets. It's a kind of take on the zombie movie, but with more of a comedy take on it. It's far more light-hearted than like Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead. It's not. It's enjoyable, for what it is, but it's not a great. I mean, you know, call me out, and I don't think this is a great film. I'm reluctant to go C tier. I'm going to go B tier because I think it's above Evil Dead and Go Shriek, but it's not a great film. But it is worth it. I mean, bear in mind, S tier is top tier. We're talking third tier, so I think it deserves B tier. Night of the Creeps, another film again, which I don't understand the love that this film gets. It's very slow paced. It's got Jill Schoelen, who's stunning. It is on. It's like a comedy element to it. I do enjoy that element, but it's very slow paced, and it's not the best movie to recommend for like mid-80s horror. I honestly don't think. I don't really know why this one gets so much love. Maybe I just grew up and had to change of opinion, but it's yeah, I'm gonna put a B tier. I can't get over that sort of like 80s aesthetic. It's set, I think it's set 1960s or 50s, but I'm gonna put it behind Return of the Living Dead. Now, Shocker is a great film. Wes Craven's probably most underrated film. This is a fantastic. It's not like Nightmare on Elm Street, but this film, I feel that it deserves so much more credit. It seems to be forgotten about. The guy who plays Horace Pinker, I think his name is. He played Skinner in X-Files. He is so good in this film. He's so evil. He's just such a nasty. If they made a franchise of this film, it would have gone on to do maybe some decent numbers at the box office. I think the problem was it came at the end of the 80s. People were getting sick of horror, and I think it just came at the wrong time. If this had came out in 84, 83, I think you would have seen 3 or 4 of these movies. But unfortunately, and maybe for the best, because some of these franchises, it is best that they only had one film, and maybe Shocker's one of them, because I'm not sure I would have wanted to see 2, 3, 4 of these films, but it's a very, very solid horror film, and it's definitely A tier for me. And now, 976 Evil, which is this was released the year before Shocker, and it's directed by Robert Englund. I'm not sure if this is the only film he's ever released, but this was quite a solid little film. It's not incredible, it's a decent movie. It's got a solid setup. The acting is okay, and I can't give it I can't put it in A tier, but I'm definitely going to put it in B tier because it's. But where do I put it? It'd have to go behind 90 the Cubes, I think. It's decent, but it's not perfect. We're far from perfect. Next up is Reanimator. Now, Reanimator is one of the greatest sort of body horror, Lovecraftian movies of the 80s. I mean, this film is just, the special effects in the film, for the time, second to none. You can't argue with it. It's just, it did, really make an impression on me as a young kid watching this film, and the sequel is really solid as well. But where would I put this? It's going to be 80. It's going to be behind Shocker. But yeah, very solid film. Now, next film, Blowout. Now, this is not a horror film. but it does have horror elements. John Lithgow in this film is incredible. John Lithgow is creepy as hell in this film. Else, it's just a John Travolta film. It's set in Philadelphia, early 80s, very sleazy, very, you know, I love that early 80s vibe. John Lithgow is, out to, destroy a witness or witnesses, and he will stop at nothing, and he will just kill other people randomly as well, just because that's the sort of character he is. And this, I mean, I would probably want to put this at S tier, but bearing in mind what I'm going to say is, what I didn't say at the beginning of the video is, these ratings are relative to the films in other films in the list. So, Timmy, what's up, man? Thank you, mate. Thank you for the support. So these ratings are in relevance to the films they're going up against. So, Blowout is going to go A. It's going to go ahead of Shocker. But what I will say is that if I was going to do my greatest films of all time, Blowout obviously would be, I was going to put Blowout with, Halloween, Terminator 2, Aliens. Blowout wouldn't be A tier, it would be C or D tier. So you've got to put it into perspective, because otherwise these tier rankings wouldn't work. So, but Blowout is definitely, amongst this group of films, Blowout is definitely A tier. It's a really, really solid early 80s thriller / horror film. The next film, and I can't even work out what film that is. Oh my god, I've done it again. I'm going to bypass that one because I can't remember what film it is. You download the images. I'll come back to that one. The next film is The Bougains, which is from 1980, and this is a creature feature. This is extremely low budget. It kind of like, this is kind of like a Critters film or a Gremlins film before those films became a thing. Underground cavern, small community, very snowy, which I like. They uncover this community of like these underground critters, and it's not a bad film. It's not great, it's kind of, it's very low budget, and it's going to be C tier. Probably it's going after Fatal Game. Yeah, it's going low. Next up, The Dormitory Blood, which is, it's a very early 80s slasher film, and it isn't very good. It's got very bad acting, and it's got a killer. I can't even remember who the killer is, and I only saw this film like 6 months ago. For that reason, it's just going to go straight to D, because it wasn't a good film. Next up is Nightmare City. Now, Nightmare City is a very, very violent zombie film, but it's not actually a zombie film. It's more of like The Crazies, the George Romero film. It's like a serum that what they've been given, and it's like a crazy professor. So it's not really a zombie film, but there's way more love. It's like, I think it's Italian or Spanish with English dubbing, but it's a very effective horror film, and that goes straight into A. Probably ahead of Reanimator, in between Shocker. Now, next film, Hospital Massacre, is this, also known as X-Ray. Stars Barbie Benson, who's in The Love Boat. One of the best looking female actresses in any slasher film of the 80s. Absolutely stunning. She plays a woman who goes in for a standard operation, and basically doesn't leave for the next 90 minutes of the film. And the thing to notice about this film is that the staff are absolutely awful. Forget the killer. Obviously, there's a killer, but the staff are absolutely horrendous. It's the worst staff you've ever seen. And she gets, passed from pillar to post, and eventually, a killer reveals itself. And the entire film, 95% of this film takes place in the cinema, in the hospital. But it's a really effective horror. It's rather like Halloween 2. It's a bit unrealistic in that, it's a busy hospital, but there's nobody there. You think, where are the staff? Occasionally, someone will turn up and just basically, being rude to her or nasty to her. So yeah, but this is definitely going in my A tier. Probably behind Reanimator though. Next up is Silent Rage, possibly the only slasher film, horror film, that Chuck Norris has ever done. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not the biggest Chuck Norris fan. Anybody who's seen this film knows the score. Guy gets some sort of crazy injection, makes him superhuman, and only one man can take him down, and that man's Chuck Norris. But yeah, this is A tier again. Not as good as Hospital Massacre, but it's definitely going A tier because it's 80s. I love early 80s. I love the small town setting of it. Now, this is a controversial choice for a slasher, a horror film. This is Cobra with Sylvester Stallone from '86. Now, Cobra is primarily an action film. There's a lot of guns. It's a Sylvester Stallone film, but you do get elements within the film of real slasher elements. The main antagonist goes, looking for a victim in a hospital with a knife, blades, and there are numerous attacks with blades in it. And it does feel a lot more like, the first half of the film feels more like a slasher film than a action film. It does go full on action in the last last third, but this is a really solid Sylvester Stallone film. It's not high art. It is what it is, but it's really enjoyable. And the main antagonist he played, apparently he was Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat 2. And in this film, you could absolutely see him as playing the Terminator. He's got a look of Arnie in Terminator 1. He's got very strong facial features, and there's a scene where he's looking in the mirror, and it's so similar to Arnie looking in the mirror in Terminator 1, where he's just fixing his hand, I think it is. It's so reminiscent of that. But yeah, so this is definitely going to go. This is A tier, definitely. I think I'm going to put this behind Shocker, ahead of Nightmare City. Next up is The Boogeyman, which is a 1980 film. It's more like a psychological, supernatural horror thriller where a killer kind of ends up in his soul ends up in a mirror, sort of. What I remember, it wasn't that long ago. It was a sort of film, but it's not a classic by any means. I don't remember that much about it, but I do remember that. Yeah, you've got a killer whose soul ends up in a mirror, and he uses the mirror to kill people. It wasn't particularly good. This is definitely C tier, and yeah, it's better than the Bougains, but it's not as good as Fatal Games. Next up, we've got, and I can't remember the name of that film. I downloaded it. Oh, Night School. Oh yeah, okay. So Night School is a 1981 slasher film, Giallo inspired, and Jess is. Oh, hi Jess. Jess is in the chat as well. Thank you, Jess. Night School is probably it's not a, I think it's an American film. Well, it's an American film. It's very much Giallo inspired. Got a killer with a motorcycle helmet on. A lot of the kills, it's blade to the throat, eyes, terrified eyes. It's very much a Giallo inspired film, and it's a really, really sort of understated early 80s slasher. It's not over the top. It's not, sort of, the killer. Okay, he does have a mask, but it's not like overstated all the time. It's a really, really enjoyable, movie. And it's got that gritty sort of. I think it might be Boston. It's either Boston or Philadelphia, early 80s. That gritty sort of, inner city feel to it, and I love that. That's why I love Blowout, and this is definitely a solid A tier. I'd actually put it ahead of Shocker. Yeah, I probably do actually. The next film is, again, I've downloaded an image and I can't be sure what film that is. Well, we'll move to Amityville 2 instead. The Amityville 2 is a sequel / prequel to the Amityville Horror about the DeFeo murders, which happened before the scenes of the Amityville Horror. Now, this apparently is a true story. But we know that this is a true story. The facts of the sequel, as in the film before, Amityville Horror from 1979, we can't say for certain that happened because, was there a poltergeist? I don't know. But Amityville 2, we do know that, a family was wiped out by Ronald DeFeo, and that was the basis for this film. And it's a really solid film. It's a very, very effective film. I prefer Amityville Horror from 79 to the sequel. I think this film had a slightly lesser budget, but the fact that it's based on a definitively, real story really gives it a sort of, really gives it a sort of weight to it. Because when you're watching Amityville Horror, as much as I love that film, you are kind of thinking, well, the stories I've heard since, you do kind of think, well, the family we're talking, maybe they were making stuff up. But this is definitely B tier for me. This it's definitely had a 976 Evil. It's probably going to go behind Hellraiser, I think. No, behind Hellraiser, not ahead. Now, Poltergeist. Now we're on the subject of, haunted house films. Poltergeist for me is it's probably, is it the greatest haunted house film of all time? Is, the newer generation, like The Conjuring, Insidious, I think only The Conjuring has ever come close to Poltergeist. I think Poltergeist is like one of the greatest, Poltergeist haunted house films ever made. It's just got fantastic cast. You've got, and the great thing about this film is, like, just when you think it's about to end, it goes on for like another half an hour, and it doesn't feel like it's overstayed its welcome. It really feels like it's earned that extra half an hour, and whereas some movies do, and The Conjuring does the same thing. It's a long film, but it never feels like it's overstaying its welcome. And that's, I think you can, what else can you say about a great movie like that? It doesn't feel like, it never feels boring. And I think that's why, for me, Poltergeist is probably the greatest haunted house movie of all time. And I think The Conjuring would probably be number 2. But Poltergeist, I haven't had a film on S tier tonight, but Poltergeist is definitely S tier for me. It is a fantastic movie. Definitely, one, as I say, in terms of haunted house, it can't be topped. Now, Near Dark. Oh my God, now we're getting to the quality now. Near Dark. This is possibly, I don't think there's any doubt, this is the greatest vampire movie ever made. People say, if you like The Lost Boys, I like The Lost Boys, but The Lost Boys was responsible for Near Dark possibly not being as successful as what it should have been, because Near Dark came out in the same year, but was very dark. No pun intended. Lost Boys was very, sort of bubblegum. It was very, it was pop culture. It had the songs at MTV. It had Corey Feldman. It had the good-looking characters. Near Dark was it was a different proposition, and I mean, it is a totally different movie. Lost Boys was set in, by the beach. Near Dark was set in the desert. Very much like more rural. But this film is just resonates with me so much. It's got a fantastic score by Tangerine Dream, who are one of my favourite ever bands. And this definitely S tier. Does it come ahead of Poltergeist? Not quite. Not quite. Now, we are getting to serious S tier territory now, because The Thing, John Carpenter, which I'm surprised. The reason I didn't have it in my last videos, because it's not technically, well, it's not a slash. The last video was a slasher film only. I've opened up the boundaries for this, but The Thing, John Carpenter's either first or second greatest film. I mean, you guys let me know. Is it Halloween or is it The Thing? For me, Halloween is John Carpenter's magnum opus. The Thing is just below it. I love The Thing. I think The Thing is one of the greatest movies of all time. But for me, it's just not quite on the level of Halloween. But it's certainly S tier. And what can I say about this film? The fact, one of the lesser known facts about people never mention, and it's a slightly controversial thing to say, but one of the reasons why it could never be made today is it's an all-male cast, which back even then was unusual. And I think even now, if you try to do that, you would probably be called out for being, sort of, oh, this is not acceptable. We need to have female representation. But this was an all-male cast, and I'm not saying that's a great thing. I'm just saying it is what it's just of its time, and this is going straight to number one. This is going ahead of Poltergeist, ahead of The Thing. Next film is Child's Play. Now, Child's Play, 1988. Now, this, Hayden's in the chat. What's up, Hayden? Jess, I'm trying to keep up. I'm getting distracted now. Apollo, what's going on? Jess, Hayden, Timmy, nice to see you in the chat. Oh, it's so good to see you in the chat. It makes my day. I'm just glad to see things, starting to pop. So Child's Play, 1988. This film is, for me, it's the best of the series. Now, I've not seen anything after 3 before the remake, so I don't think I'm being controversial in saying that the first 3 films are the best films, and then the remake. Although apparently some people say The Bride of Chucky's not bad. I like the remake, but it's just not as chilling having a AI smart robot, doll, sorry, as the bad guy. What's more chilling? An AI doll or something that's being possessed by a serial killer, and that's what makes Child's Play. It's Brad Dourif. His voice is so. Oh, he's got such a great maniacal, evil voice in that film. And one of the things about the remake that was lost, that makes the original so great, is because of the time it was set, the remake, you don't get the battery scene, which is like, anyone's seen Child's Play. She takes she turns him over, she lifts the back off, and there's no batteries, and he turns round. Now, that wouldn't work in the remake, because obviously everything's not reliant on batteries, which is just one of those little things that I think that makes the original better than the remake. The original for me is still the best of the Child's Play series. I do like 2, but I do think the original's better. 3 is interesting because Child's Play 3, anyone's not aware, Child's Play 3 was released in the UK in 1991, maybe 1992. But a year later, there was a murder of a young boy, a 2-year-old boy, in Liverpool, where I live. And because of what occurred in the murder, because he was killed by 2 10-year-old boys. In the court case, they found that they believed that the boys had watched Child's Play 3 before killing the boy, and they believed that Child's Play 3 had basically been responsible for maybe manipulating them into doing what they did, which is crazy. But Child's Play 3 was banned for must have been a good 5 to 10 years in the UK, from what I remember. So that's one of the things I remember about Child's Play 3. But I've gone completely off topic here. Jamie's in the chat as well. Hi, Jamie. Nice to see you on board as well. This is this is so good, guys. I can't believe I'm getting so much. Oh, this is so good. Thank you so much. Child's Play is definitely. It's going to be A tier. It's going to go in between Nightmare City and Reanimator, I think. Now, The Shining from 1980. Now, I didn't even want to include this film because, to me, this film, it's not even to put classes as a horror film is almost like, I love horror films, but it's almost like it's an insult to horror films, an insult to The Shining, because it's got so much going on in the background. There's so much to this film that it almost feels like it's above horror film because there's so much backstory to it. There's documentaries about this film, so it almost feels like you sort of cheapening the film by classing it as just another horror film. But it is what it is. I mean, Kubrick directed it, Stephen hated it, but it's. I think with The Shining, I mean, you guys in the chat, you might maybe differ to me, but it's a phrase that Piers has used a few times. I respect it more than I like it or love it. I mean, I've seen the film 3 or 4 times, but it's a difficult film to sort of warm to. I think you kind of you watch it and you respect the cinematography, you respect the acting, but you kind of sometimes I feel left a bit cold by it, and I don't know whether that's just me or whether that's other people, but I do feel with Kubrick, it's like 2001: A Space Odyssey. I love the film, but I kind of respect it more than I love it, and it's not the sort of film I could just sit down and watch. And maybe that's just, I think that's Kubrick's way. I think that's the way Kubrick would like things to be. But The Shining for me, it would definitely be A tier. I feel really bad about this because I'm going to put it behind Shocker. But what can you do? I love Shocker so much. It's just such a great film. Next up is Christine. Christine is we're on the Stephen King thing now, so yeah, Christine, 1983, another Stephen King interpretation. I like Christine, but I mean, I'd love to know what Stephen King's feelings are about this film, because I know he didn't like Shining, but I'd like to think that if he didn't like The Shining, then he really wouldn't like Christine, because The Shining is a better film than Christine. I'm not saying that Christine's a bad film, but I don't think it's a great film. I just think it is what it is. I mean, it's not for me a fantastic movie. I mean, I know it's I mean, help me out, guys. Do you think it's a classic because it was released in 1983? If this film was released in 2021, would you have the same affection for it? Because I do feel like us old timers, as kids, we just kind of like, you know, have this extra level of affection for these films, and I'm trying to get away from that because I think when you do revisit a film, and especially if you not revisit a film, if you watch a film for the first time, which is an old film from the 80s, and it's the first time you've seen it, you really do see it through a different perspective. Now, Christine, I did see, as a kid, but I was an older kid. I was like 16, and then I revisited the film. Well, it must have been 2000, maybe 2016, and I wasn't really that impressed with it. So I do think, context plays a big part, and for that part, I'm gonna have to put it in the B tier, maybe in between Hellraiser and Return of the Living Dead, I think, because it's not working. That's it. Now we go on to a film which I got a big problem with, and that's Fright Night. I do not like this film whatsoever. I've never liked this film. I didn't like it when I watched it in the late 80s or early 90s. I think it was like late teens. And I rewatched it again about 3 or 4 years ago, and I just do not like this film. I don't understand the love this film gets. I think it's slow paced. I don't like the main character. I just don't. Maybe it's sacrilege, but I do not get the love this film gets, and for that reason, I'm not. It's not even going to be a very, just very, very quickly. It's going to be C, and it's going to be behind Evil Dead. Now, next film is Pet Sematary. Yeah, Pet Sematary from 1989. Another Stephen King film. I do like this film. This film is. It's not. It was made on a budget, that's for sure, but it did something that I think that maybe some Stephen King films haven't done. It just seems to the essence of it seems to like really resonate with me, which is something some of the Stephen King adaptations haven't. It's just I've read the book, and I've not read many Stephen King books. I've read The Shining, I've read It, and I've read Pet Sematary, and I've read a couple of others, but of the films that I've watched, it was It, The Shining, and Pet Sematary that really. So when I watched them, even though they're not, obviously there are some major differences between the book and the movie. It did resonate with me, and I did get that feeling of like the love that went into the film. Clearly the person who I think who made the film, I'd like to think that they had some love for the book, but it's a and the opening one of the opening scenes where with the highway and the little kid getting killed, and that is really it's heart wrenching. It really is. It's like when you watch a horror film and you see you watch murders constantly. Very rarely that you watch something on screen and it really affects you, and it's that is one of the things that really affected me when I was younger, because it does, not like seeing a kid getting killed. I always say, like, one of the most shocking scenes, nothing will ever top Assault on Precinct 13, the little girl getting killed by the ice cream van. That was just like next level. What the hell? I don't care, whatever you watch, that is just so disturbing, because it's just so like you weren't expecting it, and completely off the subject again. But yeah, Pet Sematary is definitely A tier. Again, I can't put ahead of Shocker though. Unfortunately, this sounds really bad because I'm putting ahead of The Shining and behind Shocker. but it is what it is. That's just my taste in films. Next up is the Fog. How did I not include this in last week's list? John Carpenter's The Fog from 1980. It's not John Carpenter's greatest film because he's just a genius and he's done about 4 films better than this. But if you look at his golden run from 76 to 82, Assault and Precinct 13, Halloween, The Fog, The Thing, Escape from New York. I think he's done 5 films. But obviously for me, Halloween 1, Thing number 2. I mean, The Fog would probably be number 4 or 5 of those films, but it's still a great film. I just love that. I love that setting. It's like sort of San Francisco way. Guys, help me out in the chat. Jamie, help me out. Is The Fog set on the West Coast, sort of similar to where The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock was set? Because I love films set on like that West Coast of America, those little seaside towns. But it's just a great film. And Tom Atkins is in it. Jamie Lee Curtis is in it. You've got a great setting. It's John Carpenter. It's ghosts coming back from the dead. I mean, this is definitely it's S tier. It's definitely S tier. But it's gonna have to go behind Near Dark because Near Dark is just a classic. Oh, it's set on the East Coast then, so it's set in Maine. Oh, thanks, Jamie. But yeah, the same rule applies. It's give me that sort of like that setting by the coast with a lighthouse, and I'm just a sucker for that sort of thing. And next, obviously, Night School is a very much giallo-inspired American slasher film from 1981. I think it's set in Boston. And like I say, I love these, early 80s slasher films in big cities like Boston or New York or Philly or London. They got that really grimy look about them. And it's quite an interesting killer. He wears a motorbike helmet, but it's a very understated slasher. It's not it's not very gratuitous, but it's more about the inquiry into bringing this person down. There's not a lot of there are a few kills, but it's more about the people investigating and how they're going to get this guy. And it's definitely Giallo-esque, and it's a really solid, really solid early 80s film. And if anybody's not seen it, I highly recommend it. But it would have to be B tier. It'd probably be ahead of, slightly behind Hellraiser, but behind Christine, I think. Yeah. Next up, Blood Rage from 1987, and this is the last movie I am doing. Blood Rage is a 1987 slasher film, and it's a Thanksgiving film. Now, I'm not entirely sure what Thanksgiving means in England. We're not really. It's something to do with eating turkey before Christmas. I'm not quite sure, but I know there's not that many horror films with a Thanksgiving setting. But I became aware of this because I think Piz did a review of it, and I'd never heard of this film. And I think Piz loved it. I wasn't overly keen. It wasn't bad. It was, it's basically a tale of 2 twin brothers. One is sent to an asylum. He escapes, and there's kind of like a bit of a you're wondering kind of like who's actually the evil one half at the end. But it's like, there's something about those films around that sort of like mid to late 80s where without a decent budget they look really, really dated, and this, you can absolutely tell that this film is, you know, late, that's like late, mid to late 80s time period. And I don't really like this film. I've got to be honest with you. I mean, I know some people love this film, but for me, this is. I'm not going to put in D tier because I've not put a single film in D tier, but it's definitely better than the Bougains. It's going to be behind Hide and Go Shriek and Fatal Games, I think. But yeah, so there's my tier ranking for basically 80s horror movies, not all slasher films. It was going to be slasher films, but I basically thought, I need to like watch more because I don't know if I could do another 40 slasher films and give a good insight on them. But anyway, that's it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this tier ranking. Thank you to everyone who took part. Jamie, thank you. Hayden, thanks for turning up. Timmy, Jess, have I missed anyone out? Apollo, thanks for turning up. And yeah, thank you guys. And that is that. Thank you for turning up. And see you guys later. I'll be back next Tuesday with another tier ranking, or maybe I'll just do something. I might just do just a basic live stream anyway. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. See you later.